Court cam's most dramatic moments of all time. Here is a look at 10 shocking courtroom moments that occurred during some of the most captivating high-profile trials in the United States. Number 10. The verdict that Casey Anthony is not guilty. Kaylee Anthony, a toddler, passed away in 2008, and the investigators were positive that they had shown that Casey Anthony, a mother from Florida, was guilty of her death. When the prosecution presented its evidence in court, they disclosed that the word chloroform had been searched for 84 times on a family computer, along with the phrase neck breaking. Cindy, Casey's mother, is a nurse, and she testified that she was the one who had been conducting a study on the chemical before the incident. Upon hearing the verdict, the prosecutors, who had approached the courtroom with smiles of anticipation, were taken aback completely. Anthony's parents left without uttering a single word to their daughter before leaving. Later on, the judge who was presiding over the case stated on the NBC program Today that even he was surprised and disbelieving when he read the verdict. Number 9. A serial killer suggests getting married. Even though Theodore Ted Bundy admitted to killing 30 women in the middle to late 1970s, the sociopath was nevertheless romantically appealing to some people. At Bundy's second murder trial, which took place in Orlando, he asked his girlfriend at the time to testify as a character witness, and he also proposed to her. Carol Ann Boone, the couple's girlfriend, had also made arrangements for a notary to be present in the courtroom, and the couple ended up getting married right there and then. Later on, while Boone was visiting her sadistic spouse on death row, she discovered that she was pregnant with a daughter with him. Following Bundy's confession in jail, in which he admitted to committing other murders, Boone stopped paying him visits. Before his execution, they had already divorced. Number 8. During the trial for manslaughter, 3 attorneys got locked up. Judge Charles Older issued separate orders for the imprisonment of 3 defense attorneys for contempt of court during the prosecution of cult leader Charles Manson and his followers who followed in his footsteps and committed murders in 1970 and 1971. Irving Kanarek, the attorney for Manson, was the first to be called upon for his abrupt interruptions to the testimony of Linda Kasabian, a witness appearing for the prosecution. The second person to be arrested was Ronald Hughes, the attorney for Leslie Van Houten, a devotee of Charles Manson, for using vulgarity while speaking to Vincent Bugliosi, the prosecutor. Day Shin, the attorney for Susan Atkins, who was a devotee of the defendant, was given a term of 3 nights in prison for exposing jurors to media coverage of the trial. 7th, Robert Blake, the freedom of Barbara Walters is greatly appreciated. A later generation became aware of the actor Robert Blake after he was accused of killing his second wife, Bonnie Lee Backley, in the year 2001. Blake had previously done a role in the police drama Beretta, which was a production from the 1970s. Even though the actor did not testify during his criminal trial, the jury was given a pre-trial interview that he had conducted with Barbara Walters in 2003. In this interview, Blake discussed his feelings for his daughter Rosie, who is 4 years old. According to some observers, the interview humanized Blake and was a contributing factor in his acquittal on March 16, 2005. As the media gathered outside the courtroom, Blake addressed Barbara Walters, saying, "God bless you, darling. If it weren't for you, I never would have been able to escape this place." Number 6. You are required to acquit yourself if it does not fit. The rhyming gimmick was utilized by O.J. Simpson's attorney Johnny Cochran during the trial for the double murder that occurred in 1995. Simpson was a former NFL running back. A bloody glove was discovered close to the body of Ron Goldman, who had been murdered alongside Nicole Brown Simpson, Simpson's ex-wife. The other glove was discovered at Simpson's residence a short distance away. The prosecutor, Christopher Darden, gave Simpson the instruction to try them in court. "Too tight," the football star stated while holding up his hands. Even though Simpson would subsequently be found liable for the 2 killings in a civil trial, this event may be considered the pivotal turning point for the defense. Number 5. Mary Jo Buttafuoco argues in favor of the Long Island Lolita character. It is possible that Amy Fisher, a girl from Long Island, shot Mary Jo Buttafuoco in the head on the front porch of her own home. Yet this did not prevent Buttafuoco from pleading with a judge to show pity on the person who was suspected of killing her. "This is a sickly young lady. This is not a seductress," claimed the Irish Catholic mother of 2, who was also the ex-wife of Joey Buttafuoco, the proprietor of the auto body business who had stepped out on Mary Jo with the minor. The plea that Mary Jo entered in the courtroom resulted in Fisher's release from jail in 1999 after he had served 7 years for reckless assault. Number 4. A woman with a contemptuous attitude insults the Menendez brothers. The entertainment industry would like us to believe that a therapist would rather give up his license than breach the link that exists between a doctor and a patient. The truth, however, was more ambiguous for Dr. Jerome Oziel, a psychologist who had treated Eric and Lyle Menendez, the brothers from Beverly Hills who were found guilty of murder in connection with the shooting deaths of their parents in 1989. As it turned out, the confession that the brothers made to Oziel was captured on audio and served as the smoking gun. However, the psychologist had not turned up the tapes himself. Rather, the authorities learned about them from the doctor's dissatisfied lover, who informed them after her extramarital liaison with the analyst came to an end. Number 3. The strange behavior of the killer Jodi Arias. The murder of Travis Alexander, which took place in 2008, was a heinous act of violence committed by his ex-girlfriend. His neck was cut, and he was stabbed more than 20 times. One of the strangest incidents that occurred during Arias's trial was when an explicit phone call that lasted for 40 minutes and was made between Arias and Alexander, a Mormon elder, was played for the courtroom. The call contained references to rape, porn, and sexual desires during the conversation. When the trial was ended, the theatrical prosecutor Juan Martinez brought his case to a close by displaying photographs on an overhead projector. These photographs included explicit nudes of Arias, as well as shots of Alexander's bloody remains. Number 2. R. Kelly is released from custody since there is no victim to testify against him. In 2008, the R&B star was accused of producing a sex tape with a girl who was just 13 years old, which led to the prosecution of the R&B star in Illinois. That being said, in the end, they decided to refrain from calling the woman, who was 10 years older at the time, to spare her the stress. Due to the absence of this testimony, the jury quickly decided that Kelly was not guilty of any of the 14 child pornography allegations. They stated that they were unable to be positive about the identification of either of the individuals depicted in the sex film that was presented in court. A half-dozen county, state, and federal trials are being planned against the singer, who is 53 years old, beginning in 2020. One of these trials accuses him of manipulating the 2008 trial with payoffs. The interest in the artist was reignited by the documentary series Surviving R. Kelly, which was initially broadcast on Lifetime in January 2019. Number 1. The slayer of the dating game is confronted by the first victim before his sentencing. Rodney Alcala, a serial murderer who once halted his crime spree to participate in the television show The Dating Game, was condemned to death 3 times in 3 distinct trials for killings dating back to the 1970s. These punishments were handed down from the Supreme Court of the United States. Alcala, who had been a photography student under Roman Polanski, a film producer and director, had gathered hundreds of sexual photographs of young men and women, many of whom were believed to be victims who had not yet been identified. On appeal, convictions that were handed down in his first 2 trials during the 1980s were overturned. In the early 2000s, a case that involved 4 new victims was added to a 3rd trial that was being heard in the courts of California. In total, he was found guilty of 5 counts of murder in the first degree. During the final stages of that trial, which took place in 2010, the prosecution presented an unexpected witness. This witness was Tali Shapiro, who was just 8 years old when Alcala sexually assaulted her in 1968. Alcala was found guilty of molesting Shapiro in 1972 and was granted parole 2 years later. Apologizing to the victim for his despicable behavior, the predator, who was acting as his attorney, expressed his regret. Did you like it? Tell us what you think of the video in the comments section below. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more interesting videos.